Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this week's episode of Tales from the Audience. That's you guys. Now, this week we'll be reading last week's winner, as well as drawing next week's dice, as well as the SCP for the story. Thank you to everyone who participated, both writing, reading, and upvoting this week's and hopefully next week's stories. And as always, I hope that you enjoy. I'd just quickly like to thank my Tier 5 channel members and patrons. Bob the Dragon, Datamagnet, Sergeant Boomer, and Cat Crab Lobster. Again, thank you very much. Puny Sentients, written by XX Contradiction XX. Humans, by far, are the weakest of all sentient species, and can even be considered food. This is why the UIK, Union of Interspecies Kingdoms, have allowed the conquering of Earth and its colonies. When humans first came into contact with alien species, they quickly got used to them. Most of them were apex creatures of their homeworlds and found conquering and having lesser sentience serve them was more gratifying. And since its founding has vassalized or enslaved all sentients that were not at the top of their food chain. They thought Earth would be like all the other pack-hunting species. They were not like the great Kongs whom threw entire cars, nor were they like the giant tigers who could kill almost anything with ease in a single bite. Their civilizations rose from blood and war as they massacred their worlds and forced anything that could move to fuel their war machine, till they rose from their homeworld in search of new blood that could be splattered, and strangely enough, despite their bloody path and their mutual declaration of war, the war ended just as suddenly as if the species were possessed. They formed the UIC. When humans first met the UIC, they were living a utopia. Politicians were almost entirely replaced by true democracy with an informed citizens, and although countries had never ended, the humans practically had a completely unified planet. The UIC had barely looked past the surface level of the civilization before declaring war without the humans' knowledge. When the fleet first arrived at the smallest colony, the UIC's soldiers rained down from the sky by the hundreds of millions and made orbital strikes on the planet's incredibly minimal defenses. The newly created colony was taken within weeks, and occupation forces were dispatched before the fleet went on to the next system. In the years it took to get to the new system, the humans did nothing. There were no defenses in sight. The humans didn't even prepare. It was a laughingstock. Were they already surrendering? After we hailed them in on the signals to accept their surrender and heard silence, we fired upon them. Nothing happened. We did it again, and the same happened, so we assumed that it was safe to deploy the troops. At the very moment we released them to the world, lights came to life, and the atmosphere created the most glorious firework the world has ever seen. Only 1,000 troops made it to the surface, and the rest were just gone. The humans are insane. They watched their cities get crippled, their military bases turned to ashes just before a singular moment to destroy our ground forces. And through the wreckage, the asteroids surrounding the planet started glowing and moving. The humans weaponized everything they could, from the desolate mountains to the scorching deserts. What we thought were uninhabited, they used. The sheer desperation they displayed was not one of prey, but one who would kill itself just to wound the predator. Our ships were in shambles. No superior technology could beat the brute force and power exerted on them, and the humans had left the world in hunt for us. They chased us, shot us while we ran. Battered and bruised, we fled for safety, but the humans gave chase. Year after year, the ships grew weaker and weaker, and finally, they took away our clutches, and our engine failed, and we were going to die by crashing into a rogue asteroid. They didn't let us. They didn't let us die. They saved us just to extract as much information as they could, and they sent our heads back home with the hundreds of millions of drop troopers. They colonized our own worlds. They lived everywhere where we could not, and crippled us in every way. Our supplies have trickled down to nothing, and violence and uprising are occurring at the humans. they chug along. Their war machine keeps turning, and their supply keeps coming. The human shouldn't have been allowed to exist. They didn't kill us with strength, but let us run after them while they rode in a car. And we never stood a chance after the first planet, and although we still patrol it, we don't even control it. The population has long since broken free from its captors. End of story. And that concludes this week's story. I hope that you enjoyed. The SCP chosen for this week is SCP-999. There is a link in the description to my second channel where there is a reading for SCP-999. Remember, you can either choose to do the SCP in space or do the dice in space. The general theme would be, space. And quickly, on to the dice roll. Number 1 is carousel. Number 2 is headphones or music. Number 3 is scientist. Number 4 is Tiki Mask. Number 5 is wizard. Number 6 is shadow. Number 7 is Blob King. Number 8 is treasure chest. Number 9 is knocking. And number 10 is fencing. So, there you go. Have fun, enjoy, and remember there are certain rules to this. 1. Post the story down below in the comments section. I will heart it and people will like it, and at the end of the week, the one that has the most likes will be read. Number 2. It has to be safe for work. Number 3. It has to fall into the terms and service of YouTube. Number 4. Has to be less than 2,000 words or thereabouts. Number 5. There may be situational problems with a story, and I reserve the right to not read it if that is the case. And number 7. The most important rule of all. One that you need to remember to the end. Have fun and enjoy. Try, and you never know what'll happen. But if you are somebody who cannot handle criticism, then I would advise not posting your work, as other people will do what they do on the internet and may leave a criticism on your video. And if you can't handle that, I seriously suggest that you don't post. But at least try and write it in your own and have fun doing it. Anyways, that is the end of this week's Tales from the Audience. I hope that you enjoyed, and I will see you all next week. Cheers.